Welcome, everyone, to the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, Ryan Moore, as always, and what a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Sunday, February 25th, 2024 to be exact, which is episode 79. Now, this is actually pretty interesting. I've been trying to do the podcast every Sunday, but last Sunday, I totally forgot because I've been deep into the new Tomb Raider remastered game. So much that I just straight up forgot how to, that I need to do a podcast last Sunday. So I said, you know what, we're already in Tomb Raider 1. Let's see how it goes. And then I'll just have a larger amount to say for Tomb Raider on the next podcast, which is today. We are streaming live on Twitch and and YouTube. And I'm going to be basically trying to see if maybe I can change the format up a little bit or whatever. So I'm going to be doing the normal podcast. I am recording the audio version as well, but I am also streaming live and we'll see how that goes. I did hit Twitch affiliate last month, just about a month ago. So it's pretty exciting. The first month of Twitch streaming as an affiliate, being able to make some sort of money off of this streaming thing. Kind of pretty cool. Got a few subs, definitely a lot more followers, and I've been having a blast with it. So my Twitch journey so far has been off to a pretty stinking good start. And, you know, what they say about it being a marathon, not a sprint, is definitely something that I'm not struggling with, but always having to keep reminding myself as viewers come and go and things like that. I just have to remember, hey, look, this streaming stuff, playing video games online, you gotta remember why you're doing it. And what I'm doing it for is for the fun of it, to be able to talk about video games. That's why I'm streaming the podcast as well. So if people start showing up and asking questions, I'll try and, maybe move the format around a little bit. We've been going almost 80 episodes with the same format. Maybe it's time to change it up. I'm not really sure. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through like normal. I'm going to talk about what I've been playing over the last week and a half or so, or 2 weeks, and just really have a fun time talking about video games and hopefully getting some fun chats as well. So let's kind of get started with what I've been playing over the last 2 weeks. The way that I set my streams up is I normally do streams at 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. Central Time Zone. And that's worked out very, very well for me for the most part over the last month or 2 months that I've been really going hardcore into streaming. And the reason why is because with that, I'm able to kind of separate out more modern games and older games, or retro games, as we like to call it. So in the evening time, I kind of separate the evening streams for retro game nights. That's kind of what I dub it, kind of like a TV show in a way. And I've been going through a lot of video games. Over the past month and a half or 2 months, we've been going through the Donkey Kong Country series, starting out with Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo, and then going to Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest. I always mess up that title because it's almost a play on words. It could be taken either way, but it's written differently and some people misinterpret it. And then after I finished Donkey Kong Country 2, went into Donkey Kong Country 3. Once I finished Donkey Kong Country 3, started playing around with some other games and then coming back to the series with Donkey Kong Country Returns. Once I finished that, I went into Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. After that, I had a kind of a hard time trying to figure out what I wanted to play. Last week, I started playing through some older Nintendo 64 games, Wave Race 64, and a couple other games showing off like San Francisco Rush. And I finally ended up on Cruisin' USA. This was kind of a launch window game for the Nintendo 64. And if you've never played Cruisin' USA, it was an arcade game first back in the mid-90s. And it centers around driving across the United States. Since I live in the United States, especially California, that game was really interesting to me because most of the courses, even though you're driving across the United States, like half of the game's courses take place in California. You have like the Redwoods, Redwood Forest, the LA Freeway, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Pacific Coast Highway. You have a ton of California local races that you race through first. And then it starts moving on, and it kind of goes through some weird ones. You have Arizona, just as the state itself. You have Washington, D.C. is kind of where you end up as. And then like the Appalachian Mountains, for some odd reason and things like that. But the design of the game is actually very, very linear. There's not a whole lot to do. There's not really any shortcuts or anything else like that. It's a very arcade racer style of game, which basically means you are just going from the start to the finish as fast as you possibly can. There's traffic in the way that kind of, gets in your way and slows you down, definitely, especially if you hit them. But overall, I had a really fun time with it. I just did like the main single race through the United States. I didn't take out every single car and do it or anything like that. I just saw the credits and then moved on. Now, what's really kind of interesting with Cruisin' USA is, hey, they actually made 3 of these games. The Cruisin' series. Cruisin' USA was the first one. And then with the sequel, they kind of expanded it. Instead of just sticking with the United States, they expanded it into the entire world. So now you have like Russia, Japan, China, Brazil. And it's kind of interesting because all of these locales definitely have a much more varied type of atmosphere and difference to the appearance compared to something like Cruisin' USA, where half of those levels, like you were in Iowa and Idaho, and both of those levels actually look very, very similar. Farmland and stuff like that. They use a lot of the same assets. With Cruisin' World, the sequel, man, they just ratcheted up the production value with the course design. And one of the main ones that stands out to me is Russia. With Russia, you have the big hammer and sickle type of USSR Red Star, designed to a lot of the buildings that you see, and they're going really fast, so you don't really pay too much attention to them. They are also very flat textures, very compressed JPEG images and things like that. So you got JPEG compression from the 90s being applied to some of these really muddy textures, and they just don't look very good. But one thing that did stand out was the flat surface of the road in Russia, where it's got these maroon and dark blue squares on the floor. And I definitely have seen that pattern in flooring in Russia before. So it kind of made it feel a little bit similar. And they do stick to some stereotypes, but that's not a bad thing, right? Stereotypes are there for a reason. As long as they are not being mean-spirited, I think stereotypes are fine. So I really liked being able to drive through some of these locales and going, oh yeah, in Thailand or India, you do see some of those things. And then what I found was Cruisin' World was so much more difficult than Cruisin' USA. Cruisin' USA was like a piece of cake for most of it. Most of the races. Yes, I was playing on easy or medium. I can't remember. I tried doing it a couple nights in a row, I believe. But I had a pretty easy time with Cruisin' USA. Once I shifted over to Cruisin' World, man, it got so much more difficult. So much more difficult, in fact, that I really started to go, I don't know if I like this game as much. I don't know how I feel about playing this game. I was really struggling to even get 4th place, is which I believe what you needed. Or no, it was first. I can't remember. It's been about a week and a half since I played this, but you basically have to get 1st through 4th, I believe, to pass. And I was struggling to get 6th place in most of those races. Now, I was believing that the reason why I was struggling is because I picked the wrong car. I picked a Hummer. It's called the ATV in the game, but it's a Hummer straight up with a machine gun, attached to it. It's got military paint on it, like camouflage paint on it. It's got like a big old, massive set of wheels and stuff. It's supposed to be an off-road military vehicle. So I was thinking, the Hummer's definitely not known for speed, so maybe that's it. But once I finished the game, I looked back and I went to the Hummer settings, and it's the fastest car in the game. It doesn't have as good acceleration, but it definitely is top speed. And I definitely noted that when I was driving, especially in, more straightforward, straight line parts of the race, there was people in front of me and they were pulling faster than me, or they were going the same speed as me, and they were definitely in smaller cars. Now, this is a Midway game. Midway is the publisher, and not the developer, I don't believe. I think Williams was the developer, but I believe it was published by Midway. And these games, man, they were known for their difficulty in rubber banding and actually straight up cheating effects. There was a documentary a few years ago about I can't remember if it was Midway or if it was NBA Jam specifically, but they basically went back and talked to some of the developers, and the developers said, yes, we intentionally made the AI cheat in order to kind of keep a more balanced, gameplay. If you got too far ahead, you definitely start losing no matter what you did. The AI would straight up cheat to steal the ball or whatever. And that's been applied to a lot of arcade games, which is why I have kind of a love-hate relationship with arcade games. I love them, but on the other hand, I see them straight up cheating, and I go, that sucks, right? These games were designed to eat quarters in the 90s, and now that we don't have to really use currency, real money, to play these games, you just start feeding virtual quarters in by just pushing a button, and you can rack up dozens of dollars on some of these games, depending on how well they play. So I always kind of thought that was a little bit of a bummer, but it's not too bad. So once I finally did finish Cruisin' World, I had an okay time with it, but I was kind of a little tired. And I actually did this all in one night. So I played through all of Cruisin' USA, because it only took about an hour or so to finish that game. Then I went into Cruisin' World, and these are all the Nintendo 64 ports as well, by the way. And then afterwards, I went into Cruisin' Exotica. Cruisin' Exotica was the third game in the Cruisin' series. And where do you go after you've conquered the USA and then you expanded your second game into the world? Where do you go from there? Like space, right? Well, what they did is they just added more world location levels. You have like the Sahara and in a couple other, real world locations, I believe India and in some other stuff. At the very end of Cruisin' US, or it's a Cruisin' World, I believe, you go to the moon. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, you come back to the USA and you go through Florida and you go to Cape Canaveral, the Kennedy Space Center. You take a rocket ship up to the moon and then you drive on the moon. You have like a race, and it's kind of goofy because you have the same, GIF animated characters that are all, cheering you on at the end of the level, and they're all in bikinis and stuff like that and board shorts. And they're on the moon. So it makes no sense. And I miss this type of goofiness with video games. This is what video games were known for. Yes, we have a lot of really goofy video games, but they're not in the same, sense anymore. Most of the time when you have a video game that is trying to be funny, they're trying to be funny. They're not unintentionally funny, right? They are trying to be funny. With the older ones, they were unintentionally funny. You just had these, people dancing around on the moon, cheering you at the end of a race, and they're not wearing spacesuits, or anything like that. What they would do is just kind of apply a different, world or level and use a lot of the same assets. They're not going to make all new assets for just the moon level, right? So that's kind of what was really interesting about World. But once we got into Cruis'n Exotica, where do you go beyond the moon? You go to different planets, right? Or solar systems or whatever. And that's kind of where it got really not as fun for me, intentionally goofy to the point where I wasn't really interested. So you definitely do have some real world locations in Cruis'n Exotica, but you also have those unintentional or those intentionally funny bits, like you go through the Amazon and there's a bunch of dinosaurs and pterodactyls flying around and stuff like that. Like the Amazon is a real world location, but you're back in time, or there's just random dinosaurs roaming around. I don't know, but it doesn't make sense to me. And then you also have a real world location like underwater. So you're racing underwater, but it's Atlantis. And so it's like a fake, city and all that stuff underwater. And you're driving the car through, just the ocean. Kind of a little bit goofy, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. And it's still a fun game. It still uses a lot of the same assets. I did find that game to feel a lot different because of the way that they changed the graphical style and also the handling of the car. If you were going to say, what is your favorite game in the series? I would say Cruis'n USA. I think holding it down to the USA and the original game itself, I think is probably my favorite out of this series. If you were going to ask me what is your idea of the best game in the series, like which one does all the stuff the best, technically I think Cruis'n Exotica is, even though it doesn't do the digitized graphics as much for the cars, and it looks a lot different. My least favorite is Cruis'n World. I think the difficulty just got ratcheted up way too quickly. Crazy amount of difficulty, and the levels, as fun as some of them are, a lot of them are feeling very generic, and it's like, whatever, it's fine. So the Cruis'n series ended with Cruis'n Exotica up until Cruis'n Blast, which came out in 2017 for the, what was it? The arcade. It was an arcade game again. Back in 2021, they released that as a port on the Nintendo Switch. So a few days later, I went back and played Cruis'n Blast for the first time since it came out on the Switch. And it's fine, but, I really wasn't having that much fun with it. Like, I got bored after 2 races. It's really, really short for those races. Those races are completed within less than 2 minutes each. One of the races took less than 50 seconds. Like, I started and I was starting to kind of get into like a conversation about that game as I was streaming it. And before I knew it, the level was over. The race was over. And I looked at the time. I went, man, that felt really short. I looked at it. It was like 49 seconds. I went, man, that's crazy, right? So I didn't finish Cruis'n Blast. I finished it back when the game came out. But again, I was sitting there on my Switch and I was just like not having fun with it when it first came out. I was like, there needs to be more than this. It's way too linear, way too much emphasis on crazy things happening versus a good mechanic of a race, right? The balance between the AI and you, the management of boosting and stuff like that. There's just crap happening 24/7 on that screen. And it's way too much. It's ADD type of design mentality put to it. And I don't like that design mentality at all. So that's kind of where I am at with the Cruis'n series. I might come back to Cruis'n Blast, play it on stream at some point again, but the overall trilogy of Cruis'n titles, USA is my personal favorite, but I think Exotica is the best one. World being just one of those ones where it was too difficult to enjoy properly, and the world locations are good, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as Cruis'n USA. Maybe that's just my bias to the United States, right? So I was playing that for retro game nights, and then we moved on to the game that came out on Valentine's Day, Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3 Remastered. Kind of a mouthful of a title, right? They could have just called it Tomb Raider Remastered, but there's so many Tomb Raider games, plus the reboot from 2013, over a decade ago, that if they said Tomb Raider Remastered, most people, I think, at this point in life would associate a remaster of the first Tomb Raider 2013 trilogy game instead of the original that came out in 1996. So, let's kind of unpack the Tomb Raider Remaster game. Like I said, it came out on Valentine's Day, which was kind of an odd thing, but it was a memorable date to release a video game on. So what happened was I bought that game a couple nights before on Green Man Gaming for $18. A remaster of 1, 2, and 3, these games that are sold for pennies on the dollar, basically like $1 each, I'm sure. They remastered it, and when the game was announced back last year, I looked at the original initial release trailer. And I'm not one to go back and re-look at trailers and analyze trailers and all that. So from what I had the impression of the first time in this, press conference at E3, I went, oh yeah, cool. They're remastering Tomb Raider. I'm not really excited for a lot of games right now, but I do remember enjoying that. So that's probably something I'll take a look at. But I did not remember liking the design look, the remastered look of it. It looked a lot more plasticky and rubbery from what I remember. It looked more mobile-like, and that term is definitely derogatory. So I was not really initially excited about the look of the game, but I was excited to go back to those games. So a few months later, back in December of last year, just a few months ago, I started doing Retrocember. And Retrocember is kind of a little term that I made up, and to celebrate, instead of doing one single game for the month, because I do Game of the Month every month, I'm going to talk about that at the end of the podcast. But Retrocember was basically a celebration of one game per day in a generation of games. So I did the 8 and 16-bit games back a couple of years ago and kind of combined them. So Genesis, Nintendo, and Super Nintendo games all kind of combined. And I did just a little picture and, a paragraph sentence of my personal feeling on that game. One game per day for the month of December. And I call it Retrocember. This last year in 2023, instead of doing a picture and a quick little paragraph per day, I wanted to ratchet up the production value of Retrocember. So instead of doing that, I did an entire video. These videos are pretty short, just a couple minutes long each, but I had a paragraph or two explaining my experience of one game per day in the 32-bit generation of video games. That's basically the Sony PlayStation. So I kind of locked it down to the Sony PlayStation, but I talked about one PlayStation game per day, and man, it was so much fun. So that's kind of what I did for Retrocember 2023. The 5th or 6th day of that game, 4th or 5th or 6th day of that Retrocember series, I talked about Tomb Raider on the PlayStation. And I talked about how I never owned Tomb Raider 1, nor did I ever play Tomb Raider 1. So I actually sat down and played through the first few levels of Tomb Raider 1 on the PlayStation while recording B-roll footage, basically. And I had a blast doing it. It was so much fun. But it's kind of hard to go back to those tank controls, right? So as I remembered, in February, in Valentine's Day, Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 Remastered is going to come out. I'm going to play through that series. I'm going to play through Tomb Raider finally. Because my first Tomb Raider game was in 1997 on a Windows 95 PC. I got Tomb Raider 2. And I remember vague parts about that game. I remember Venice. I remember getting the boat. I remember the shipwreck and swimming with sharks and trying to take out the sharks and not get eaten. I remember the Tibetan mountains, but that's about it. And so I was really looking forward to getting to Tomb Raider 2, but I had to get through Tomb Raider 1, which I have very, very, very little experience with. So after I had a wonderful Valentine's Day lunch, instead of going out to dinner on Valentine's Day, I did a lunch with my wife. And man, we had some great pizza. We had a little lunch date and a shopping spree. We hit a couple stores on Valentine's Day afternoon. And then after all was said and done for Valentine's Day in the afternoon, celebrating it in the afternoon, I came on stream and started playing through the remaster, just loading up Tomb Raider 1 and going through it. And oh my gosh, let's talk about it, because I have talked about it on stream, but not on the podcast. So let's talk about Tomb Raider 1 Remastered. So you start up the game, and the development studio behind these remasters are Aspyr. And I'm not really sure what else they've done. I've definitely heard that name before, and nothing's come to mind. Unfortunately, I was in the middle of writing some notes, and so I was going to look up what else Aspyr did. And I just kind of forgot to do that. And then I kind of got dragged away by my wife to go do some shopping right before I started streaming this podcast. So I didn't have the time to go look that up. But Aspyr, man, they do some really, really, really good work. I'm very, very, very happy with what they've done with these remasters, because what they've done is they basically did the cool thing with remasters that I love, where they have the new remastered style, but if you hit a button, it reverts back to the old classic graphical style of those original games, the way it looked in 1996. Just up-resed. So everything looks a lot cleaner. Everything looks really nice and smooth, but you do have those very, very, very sharp polygon, jagged style edges to everything. So I've been really, really enjoying it. And man, I can't say enough good things about it. Tomb Raider 1 was really interesting because, like I said, it's my first real experience with the game itself. So starting off, you start in a cave and you start exploring, and there's a lot of booby traps and stuff like that. And you move forward through this, and there's a few little cool action cutscenes, a couple cutscenes with dialogue, but that's really it. There's not much rhyme or reason to what you're doing, except for like a handful of cutscenes throughout the entire game. The entire game takes roughly about 15 hours. It took me, I think, like 24 hours to get through. Because it's my first time through. I'm exploring and taking these puzzles in as an adult, but I remember I don't know how to do anything. And some of these puzzles are obtuse. Some of them are pretty hard to figure out. And coupled with some game design choices, it was very rough in 3 separate parts. There's the cistern level, which is what I really got stuck on. The cisterns is basically this level where you have an aqueduct that you have to drain and fill multiple times. This huge, massive area, this closed off area with a bunch of different rooms. And you have to basically fill and lower and open up doors and levers. And some of the areas have to be filled to get to the levers. Some of it has to be drained to get to the door levers. And it just kind of got a little crazy in this middle section where I sat down and I spent about 30 to 45 minutes just spinning my wheels going, okay, I see the key that I need to get. It's right behind this gate. To get to the gate, I need to pull a lever. The lever, I can see it's really up high and I need a platform to get to it, but I can't get on the platform because the water is too low for me to be able to reach out of the water and grab the ledge to get to the platform, to do the platforming section, to get the lever, to open the gate, to get the key, right? Kind of one of those like little steps that you just, you figure out. While I'm doing this, I'm also streaming, trying to talk and engage viewers and, all that fun stuff that goes along with streaming a video game and being on camera, trying to do a puzzle. So I started getting a little frustrated. Started having a couple viewers giving me some hints, but I'm trying to figure this out on my own. So I had to take a little break. I came back, I figured it out, and we moved forward. That was the first section that I really got stuck on. But as I was moving forward with that level, I had another viewer, Nirik. He's a dude from Germany who streams as well. Man, Nirik definitely helped me out. He reinvigorated my enjoyment of that section, and we started moving on, and he was cheering me on through my gameplay. And that is something that I'm really digging about streaming, is having viewers sit there and watch me play and listen to me and interact, and we have really fun conversations. But if I get stuck on something, if I get really, really, really stuck on a section of a video game, I really get angry. I get really frustrated, and I try to keep my frustration in check, but that's actually really hard for me to do. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, let's say. So having other people go, no, you got this, dude. Don't worry about it. It's okay. We all get stuck on this section. Everyone gets frustrated. It was a real blast playing through that game with him, cheering me along. And this happened a couple times in the game where it was just, a section that I'm missing, something that I'm not seeing properly. So we got through the cisterns, and then we moved on to the Egyptian levels. And I don't know what else is out there with Tomb Raider 2 and Tomb Raider 3. I know that there's a Tibetan section. I don't remember pretty much anything of Tomb Raider 3 on the PlayStation. So I'm kind of playing through these games, and I really don't think anything's going to beat the Egyptian levels for me. One is because of the interactions that I had with Nirik and a bunch of other followers and viewers watching along and kind of just cheering me on as I played through that. But the other thing is the actual level of the Egyptian, tombs and catacombs and temples and just all of that, I really love. From a personal perspective, I've always had a real love for Egyptian mythology and culture and just the art style. And I forgot that over the years. As I play through video games, I was not really thinking about it up until Assassin's Creed Origins came out in 2017. The Assassin's Creed series I've always loved, but after 1 and 2, I went, yeah, whatever, they're fine games. But then Black Flag came out, the pirate game, right? I love pirates so much. It reinvigorated my enjoyment of that series. But then it kind of dropped away again. They went with Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Assassin's Creed blah, blah, blah. And they just kind of churned out those series of games. Once they came out with Assassin's Creed Origins, I was like, I don't know about this game, the Egyptian culture, whatever. And I kind of forgot how much I used to love it back in the day, back in 5th and 6th and 7th grade. One of the reasons is because I actually had a teacher who made us do an Egyptian art project for school back in 5th or 6th grade. And as we did that, I actually got to have a group of other classmates that I went over to their houses, and we bonded and we had a really good time. Definitely had a girl that I had a crush on was in that group with me. And so there was that whole issue as well. So I really enjoyed Egyptian culture from that aspect, being able to do it in school and kind of doing some art projects. I also loved it because my grandma actually went to Egypt and she showed me pictures of Egypt when I was really young. And I remember hearing stories of Egypt and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So I have like these two sides of me that has really fun experiences about Egyptian culture and watching pictures and movies and all this stuff. And then like even the Mummy movies, right? The remaster or the remade Mummy movies from the late 90s. I also loved those with Brendan Fraser. So when I went into Assassin's Creed Origins, that kind of reinvigorated my enjoyment of the Egyptian culture. As I played through Tomb Raider 1 and I realized, oh, this is all Egyptian. You know, we've got a bunch of sphinxes and we've got mummies and we've got like mummy monsters and we have like a lot of hieroglyphics and stuff like that as textures on the wall, and you're dealing with sand and puzzles. Man, I just dug it. I dug it so much. So going through Tomb Raider 1, I wasn't really thinking about the story at all. There's, like I said, very loosely connected storyline plot points. And then getting into the end game of Tomb Raider 1, it goes off into some supernatural level design. But I forgot. Lara Croft in Tomb Raider is basically just a take on Indiana Jones, but with a female lead character. It's pretty much the same exact stuff, right? She's this globe-trotting archaeologist, adventurer that deals with a lot of, adventures that kind of dip into some supernatural stuff. And so I totally forgot about that. As I was playing, I was just like, yeah, we're in tombs. We're finding like these valuable, mythological type of amulets and stuff, but then it goes into like some weird stuff. And so you're dealing with Atlanteans and Atlantis in this game. And I went, really? Because I'm not getting any Atlantean vibes out of this level design at all, but that's the way it is. So whatever. And I really, really, really had a good time with Tomb Raider 1. So once I finished Tomb Raider 1, I moved on to Tomb Raider 2. And this is where the memories started coming back, just flooding my mind with these memories. So with Tomb Raider 2, I actually started the series with Tomb Raider 2 back in 1997 when that game came out. I remember seeing a bunch of pictures, seeing, Lara Croft all over the place. And, I was at that age where Lara Croft looked really nice to me and appealed to me as a teenage boy. And so I finally got Tomb Raider 2. We got it on PC and we had a Windows 95 computer. And I definitely remember like trying to mod the game and stuff like that. And I remember playing it, but I don't remember a lot of the level design. I remember like blips and bloops of that gameplay where you start off in this cave, but I don't remember the cave's location. Apparently, it's the Great Wall of China. So you got some Chinese tigers that show up and try and eat you. You've got crows and black widows that come to get you. And those black widows, man, the spiders are the deadliest enemies in that game so far, by far. You can outswim a shark. You can, take down a bunch of dudes with shotguns. But if a black widow spider comes and tries to get you, man, be careful. They will drain your life very, very quickly. So that's kind of my initial start of Tomb Raider 2 with this remaster version going, oh my gosh, this game just cranked up the difficulty and the action. With Tomb Raider 1, it was very slow, very methodical, very, paced as you are in this large environment. No one else is around and you are trying to figure out puzzles on either how to get out of the situation you're in or how to get into a situation so that you can retrieve an artifact. But with Tomb Raider 2, you are straight up put into action mode. And I really equate it to Alien and Aliens, the movies, right? Alien is a very intense, purposefully slow experience, a psychological thriller in certain ways, where you are not knowing where the alien is. There's only one, right? And Ripley is, trying to search for Newt and the cat and, all that stuff. Is Newt in the first one, or is it just the second one? I can't remember. Anyways, the crew dies and you're all alone. You're being hunted by the alien. And it's just so atmospheric intense. That's how Tomb Raider 1 is. Tomb Raider 2 goes in the opposite direction. It takes the action sequences very, very seriously. Every nook and cranny, every turn, every lever that you press or pull opens up a combat encounter pretty much. Even in the beginning of the first section of Tomb Raider 2, you are put on a path of booby traps, one right after the other, and it is just like intense. So much so that it definitely felt like Aliens, the second game in that or series in that movie's trilogy, or quadrilogy. I believe that's the first time I heard that term, quadrilogy, when you had Alien, Aliens, Alien Resurrection, and then I can't remember what the fourth one was. But man, they really ratchet up the combat encounters, the action sequences, the booby trap sequences. And right off the bat, I definitely had a less enjoyable time because I went right into Tomb Raider 2. I didn't have to wait for, a month for a new game to come out or years for a new game to come out. I just went right into it. And I'm having a less enjoyable time. Not that I'm having a bad time, but I'm having a less enjoyable time with Tomb Raider 2. Maybe that's because of the action sequences. Maybe that's because of more booby traps and level design that is designed to kill you at every single nook and cranny and turn. But I really, really think it's the level design that is inhibiting my enjoyment of it. And it comes at the shipwreck level. So before we talk about the shipwreck sequence, let's talk about the game leading up to that level sequence. You start off in China, at the Great Wall of China, exploring. You have some definite Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones level booby trap sequences, and they're kind of cool. You've got the walls with spikes closing in, kind of like the trash compactor sequence in Star Wars. You've got the balls rolling down the ramp, and running away from them like Indiana Jones. So there's definitely some really cool stuff. Then at the very end, you got this chasm that you have to cross, and there's a zip line, and you jump on the zip line and you swing over this big, great, beautiful ravine. And before we move on, let's talk about the graphics. The old school classic graphics are awesome. They're up-res, so everything looks nice and clean, but there's definitely, you can see, these are 1996 level textures. But everything is up-res to 4K, so you're getting a beautifully clean image of these pretty bad textures and level geometry. But when you switch to the remastered graphics, which definitely is what I'm playing through most of the time, man, it just is so beautiful. Like I said, when I saw that initial trailer, the one time that I saw it briefly, because it was in the middle of a lot of other trailers being shown, so I didn't get to have it soak it up, man, I was just like, I don't know about this. But now that I'm playing it, you see the graphics, you see the love and care and tenderness going into this video game. And man, it looks beautiful. It looks great. It looks fantastic. Could it look better? Sure, I believe it totally could. But I think it does a really good job of not only looking good, but it keeps the majority of the intent and artistic design for those original games. So far, like I said, I'm in the middle of Tomb Raider 2, so I can't speak to 3 yet. But I can speak to the majority of Tomb Raider 2. and all of Tomb Raider 1. It keeps the intent and design and feeling and atmosphere, switching back from the classic to the modern, original and remastered, swapping back and forth on the fly. You see the tone change subtly in certain parts, but the majority of it is this is just a much better looking version of this game, a much better enjoyable experience in play of this game. But the tone, the atmosphere really does not change. What they did with the remastered is just add little graphical effects and details to what was already there. If you have a wall texture that is covered in ivy, they have that wall texture there and it looks much better and cleaned up and recreated. But then they add some three-dimensional vines and wind blowing through them. So it kind of sways a little bit depending on the environment. When you have a cave system that is trying to shine a light in a certain area, instead of it being a fully covered cave, but with just random ambient light sources that are don't actually make sense if you look at it from a logical perspective, they've opened up the cave ceiling a little bit to allow light in with some textures, but you can't actually move through it. It's all the design of how these video games are created. You know, you're using and playing around with light sources in a way like a movie. You know, when you watch a movie, the lighting should make sense from a logical perspective, but when you step back, you realize, oh, they have light sources bouncing off of, lighting cards and things like that to illuminate the actor's face in a way that it normally wouldn't if the lights and cameras weren't there. And that's what they're doing with Tomb Raider 1 and 2 and 3 remastered. They're trying to make light sources make sense in the game, and it looks phenomenal. It looks so good. So I cannot say enough good things about Tomb Raider Remaster. They take a few tiny artistic creative freedoms, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a really good thing. They can keep the intent and design and atmosphere, but just add little things to make it even better. They add God rays, coming down from a cave system. So you see those little rays of light, or in a forest, you see they're called God rays, and it looks like God shining his light down upon us, right? And so those little flares, those little artistic flares are so stinking cool looking. Or when you're in a jungle forest and you see a little bit of mist, not even rolling in, it feels almost, I think it's static mist or fog, but those little tiny effects definitely ratchet everything up, create a more cohesive atmosphere to where everything looks like it's supposed to be there from the start. And when you switch on the fly from the classic graphics to the remastered graphics, you can tell, but it doesn't feel like it's a different game. It doesn't feel like they are trying to put their own spin on anything. They're trying to just recreate the atmosphere with more modern lighting techniques and artistic design choices to just add a little bit more to make it feel a little bit more like the way it was originally intended to. Because those original classic graphics don't have that, So man, I've been loving the crap out of it. I'm so happy that I was finally able to say I beat Tomb Raider 1. Moving on to Tomb Raider 2, like I said, the first level is the Great Wall of China. The second level is Venice, and I definitely remember Venice. It's a very small location, though. I did not think it was going to be that small. But there's multiple levels in sections of those levels. And it's kind of a little bit weird because with Venice, the first section, level 1 of Venice, because you've got like these locations and there's multiple levels in each location. So the first level of Venice, very, very small. You jump in a boat, and I definitely remember vehicles being a new thing in that game. So you jump in the boat, and you go around a couple little alleyways and things like that. And it's a fun time. It's a real fun time. Moving through Venice, I realized, oh wow, they're definitely adding up multiple combat encounters where every time you hit a lever, every time you make some sort of progress, you start encountering stuff. And I'm sure this is more of an executive order type of thing from the higher ups when the game was initially created. Oh, we need more action. The first game was too boring. You were sitting there, you fought a tiger every, 4 hours. We want you to fight 5 guys every 5 minutes, a guy per minute, killing. That's how it feels like, not designed by committee, but design with influence from the executive branch of the studio, where they needed to make more combat encounters, maybe because of, QA, maybe because of focus testing and things like that. Oh, I want Lara Croft to be gun toting and carrying around an M16. So now she's got an M16 and a grenade launcher, right? And yes, she definitely does have an M16 and a grenade launcher in that game. So it's been kind of a little bit crazy to see the very, very deliberate switch from exploration with a little combat to the majority of combat encounters and a little bit of exploration, but more combat encounters and puzzle solving. The puzzles in Tomb Raider 1, really, really fun. Like I said, for the most part, there's 2, 3, maybe at tops, parts where I got stuck. With Tomb Raider 2, once I moved on from the Venice section, which Venice starts with, the boat and going through the alleyways in Venice on a boat, to an opera house, and the opera house being just a lot of combat encounters, but definitely some puzzles. Moving on to the part where you get stuck on an oil rig and then into a shipwreck. The ocean section of the game has become a slog. It has stopped my progress so many days. And I do think, one, it is going back to that 1997 style of gameplay design with puzzles that are very obtuse, level design that is very hard to parse out, along with the fact that every single moment you are encountering an enemy before you even get to have the layout of the land. You walk in a room, you are shooting like 5 dudes. You are using several health packs before you get even the look of, okay, this is where I have to be. This is where I can, perch and maybe get a few shots off if a guy comes in the room. That is one issue. The other issue is the combat in Tomb Raider 1 was very, very open-ended. You had these huge, massive combat arenas to work in, right? There is a section where you're in a coliseum and you've got monkeys or gorillas, and you've got tigers, and you've got bad guys all running around this huge, massive coliseum. You can walk around the edge at the ledge of the coliseum's walls. You can jump on rock formations that are higher up so the tigers can't get you. You can drop into some of the gladiator pits to kind of, make sure that you have a little safe haven. Like, there is a ton of different combat encounter positions that you can take in Tomb Raider 1. Tomb Raider 2 is very, very, very close quarters. And it really hinders the combat, because one of the cool things about Tomb Raider 1 is you have the guns, but you also have the ability of movement, and not just running around in a circle and kind of skipping back and maybe even strafing. You have the flips. You are jumping forward. You're doing backflips. You're doing side flips left and right during the enemy encounters, and you had the space available to do that. But with Tomb Raider 2, everything's enclosed. Everything's close quarter combat. So yes, you have the option, but you don't have the space to be able to do that. You have the will and the desire, but you don't have the space available for you to do those flips and things like that. You have much better weapons at your disposal too. You have pistols and automatic pistols. You have shotguns and Uzis. You have M16s and grenade launchers. But all of those are kind of, a moot talking point because you don't have the space available to use it as much. So you just kind of stand your ground, have the most powerful or fastest shooting gun, and you kind of take everyone out very quickly. That's kind of your go-to. That's at least my go-to when I play the games. So, man, it's been really, really fun, but it has also been a real disappointment to go, man, Tomb Raider 1 started out so good. It followed this plan of attack so well executed throughout the entire first game. And then they kind of switch course. They kind of course correct instead of saying, oh, this is going to be more exploration, bigger locales. They go, we're going to focus more on combat and action. And it's funny that I say that because as a kid, I definitely would have liked that. A 12-year-old boy is definitely going to like action more than puzzles, right? Depending on who you are. But for me, I definitely was in the camp of, I want more action. I want to shoot guys. I want to have a grenade launcher. And now coming back to it as almost a 40-year-old dude, man, it is definitely the opposite. It is definitely, I am more geared towards exploration and puzzle solving and seeing the atmosphere and the design elements versus the combat encounters and the, crazy booby trap levels. They're all set pieces and there's not a whole lot of them after the first section of the game so far. Like I said, I'm about halfway through at this point, but the shipwreck level, oh my gosh, it nearly killed me. So let's talk about the game itself. So you start off in the Great Wall of China, you move into Venice in this Venice Opera House section, and then you hitch a plane ride, a helicopter ride, you hitch a plane ride in this massive hangar plane, and you get found out and you get captured. So Lara gets captured and gets taken to an oil rig and put in this prison area with all of her weapons gone. You have to bust out and find your weapons and get off of this oil rig. And that's a whole section. And I actually had a pretty decent time with that level. How you get off the oil rig is you find a submarine and a guy is escaping in the submarine and you hitch a ride on the top of the submarine. I don't know how this, she definitely does have in the CGI, which is pretty rough, but it's cleaned up pretty rough, right? It's using all those old polygon early CGI sequences where, it definitely does not look realistic. It definitely looks like a 1990s CGI computer generated image. But she definitely has like a mask, like an oxygen mask, as she's holding on to the outside of this sub as it goes down into this, into the ocean. The submarine mechanic, it's a small little submersible, but the submarine mechanic sees that Lara is hanging on. So he uses an arm attachment on the sub to kind of swat at her. He doesn't realize that he's running into a rock, so he crashes the sub and the sub explodes, or at least sinks. And Lara is sitting there at the bottom of the ocean with no way of surviving and a bunch of sharks swimming around. So that's the start of the shipwreck level. It's a shipwreck, right? So guess what's at the bottom of this ocean right where she crashed? A shipwreck. This big cruise line ocean liner shipwreck. So you swim towards it and there's a bunch of sharks around. So you kind of not only have to find where to go, which with those old 1996, 97 graphics, there's a lot of fog and pitch blackness. So you kind of have to figure out, oh, there's a bunch of oil drums and boxes, kind of breadcrumb leading you to that section. And once you do that, you get to this area where Lara is inside this sunken ship, but there's air pockets. So she can start breathing again. That's like the first thing. After you kind of go, okay, okay, I can breathe. You realize there's 2 sharks coming at you too. So the sharks come at you. You have to, find your way away from the sharks, deeper into the sunken shipwreck area. And as soon as you do that, you encounter a bunch of enemies, which doesn't make sense to me. These enemies should not be there from a logistical in-world game, perspective. This is a abandoned, sunken shipwreck at the bottom of the ocean. Why are there at least 150 dudes hanging out with submachine guns, walking around with lights on and propane, gas flames and LED lights, and not LEDs, but like fluorescent lights and stuff like that? Like it doesn't make sense from a in-game perspective, but whatever, right? However, the levels are designed so labyrinthian that it's become a real burden to me, a real pain in the butt, a real stopping point where every 5 minutes or so that I start making progression, that I figure something out, I immediately get stopped with about maybe half an hour of going, what do I do? Where do I go? What is how do I get out of this section? Levels are very vertical now, with a lot of crazy doors and levers that are really, really hard to see. With the original first game, when you swap back and forth between the classic and the remastered graphics, the remastered graphics are kind of a little bit darker and in more, neutral lighting. When you switch to the classic graphics, everything's so bright that it's very easy to see a very dark place. So you do end up swapping between, or at least I do, swapping between remastered and classic graphics back and forth throughout the entire game. And it's really fun not only to see what the game looked like originally, but what it looks like now. You also have the added benefit of being able to see certain things that you can't see in the remastered just because of the way the lighting works with the 2 game engines or the original design of those graphics. With 2, they incorporated flares to be able to see in the dark. So that trick doesn't work as well. And in fact, sometimes it's reversed. The remastered version has better and brighter lighting in certain areas than the original classical graphics because you're supposed to use the flares. And the flares are pretty easy to come by. You don't see them all the time, but I'm not using them all the time either. So as I go through, if I do get into an area where I go, man, it's really dark, and even switching between the 2 graphic styles doesn't really afford me enough light to see where I'm supposed to go, pop open a flare. I've got like 25, 30 of them, at any given time. So not too bad. But what I've really, really, really come to or trying to come to grips with is the design of the levels in the shipwreck area. It has been so frustrating that it has stopped my progress multiple times. Not only that, but I've also been having some streaming issues where my stream was just crashed, gone down, stopped. Twitch will just straight up stop my stream in the middle of it. I got raided the other night, and as the raid happened, my stream died. Like just awful, awful things. I think I fixed it. But it's been a real big bummer. Not only that, but I'm getting so frustrated, and I don't want to look up cheat codes. I don't want to have a guide open up or a walkthrough showing me where to go. I want to naturally find and stumble upon, oh, hey, I solved that puzzle. Oh, I need to go here. But because of the level design with Tomb Raider 2, especially the shipwreck area. Remember, the first several, sections I've had no problem with, but the shipwreck, for whatever reason, my brain has been just melting during stream, just taking on water, right? I cannot figure it out. And it makes me feel real stupid. I feel like an idiot while playing this section of the game, where I'm running around for 30 minutes at a time in a single room or section, and I'm just not seeing something. I always say, all right, where's the ladder, Ryan? The ladder is this phrase that my friend Tom and I had when we would get stuck in a game, and it came from Prince of Persia. When I was playing the Prince of Persia Warrior Within, which is the second game in the trilogy, when that game first originally came out, my friend Tom would come over to my house and we would play video games together all the time. When that game came out, he came over to my house one night and we were sitting there, and I got stuck in this corridor, this area where I could not find the exit. I could not get up to the ledge to move on and progress the game for like an hour. And so we're sitting there walking around, like doing everything that we could to find the exit. And unbeknownst to us, the way that the textures looked or whatever it was, we did not realize that there was this tiny little area in the corner where there was a ladder that moved from the floor to the, next ceiling ledge area up top that would allow us to move on and progress throughout the game or the level. So we always came up with this phrase of, where's the ladder? Where's the ladder? Whenever we would get stuck in a video game, where's the ladder, Ryan? We got to find that ladder because we know there's a way out. We just got to find it. And so coming into Tomb Raider 2, playing through all of the game, I've never really had that much of an issue of kind of level progression, where to go next, how to do something. But when I got to the shipwreck area, oh my gosh, it has been nothing but where's the ladder? Like I said, every minute or two, it feels like I'm immediately stopping for 30 minutes and going, how do I get out? How do I progress? Where do I go next? And so I am very close to the end. And so hopefully I'll stream a little bit of Tomb Raider later on this afternoon, maybe even this evening, depending on, what the day holds for me. But man, it has been nothing but a real frustration. And I don't want to get angry in stream. I really try not to. But like I said, I'm not going to look up answers. I'm not going to go look up a video on how to progress through the game. I want to do it on my own. But because this level just is so weirdly designed where my brain cannot figure it out, I've been feeling real stupid, feeling like an idiot, and getting real frustrated on stream. And I don't want to do that. So that's where I am with Tomb Raider 2 right now. In the last section, very close to the last area of the shipwreck. I just need to find a key. And unfortunately, these levels, let me tell you how long these levels should take. These levels, because I did look up how long these levels were and how people are moving through this game. These levels are about 20 to 30 minutes each, roughly, to go from the start of the level to the end of the level. 20 to 30 minutes. One of the levels in Shipwreck took me 2.5 hours. That's how stuck and frustrated I got. 2.5 hours instead of 20 to 30 minutes. The next level took an hour and a half versus, again, 15 to 20 minutes roughly. Like, it's just, I'm sitting there going, all right, cool. I enter a door. Crap. Now I'm stuck again. Like, oh, I finally figured it out. Oh, crap. I'm stuck again. So it's been rough over the last couple of days of streaming this game, but I'm really trying my best to not get frustrated, not get angry on stream, not, showcase my anger or pissed offness of the game, and just move forward with it. I'm excited to get out of the shipwreck area and move on. I have heard that Tomb Raider 2 is the most difficult out of the trilogy. But it's a lot of people's favorites too. And I definitely am in the camp of Tomb Raider 1 being easily better than Tomb Raider 2. We'll see what Tomb Raider 3 has in store, but that's going to be for another podcast. So that is kind of what I've been playing throughout my streaming journey over the last couple of weeks. I am definitely looking forward to a couple games that are going to come out here, but mainly what's going to come out at the end of the month, or actually the first of the month, or technically the 5th, is what I've been talking about over the last couple of podcasts. It's a game called Expeditions, a mud runner game. I was corrected on this the other day by someone in the SnowRunner subreddit. Someone was posting about the new SnowRunner game, the sequel to SnowRunner, which is called Expeditions, a mud runner game. I said, "Oh, hey, don't be down on Expeditions. It's going to be cool. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, but you don't need to be mad about people posting about that game in the SnowRunner forum, because it's literally the sequel to SnowRunner. It's called Expeditions, a SnowRunner game." And he corrected me. He says, "No, it is a mud runner game," as the subtitle, which I think is a really stupid title, especially since SnowRunner is basically just a sequel to Mud Runner. Mud Runner is a sequel to Snow Tires or Spin Tires. So you had Spin Tires, then Mud Runner. And then Mud Runner's subtitle was a Spin Tires game. Then when you got the sequel to Mud Runner, the second game in the series, the third game in the series called Snow Runner, a Mud Runner game, which just, oh man, it is so stupid. And so now they're going back to Mud Runner for whatever reason, but Expedition seems really cool. It comes out March 5th, but because I pre-ordered that game, and I got the biggest edition, the Supreme Edition or whatever it's called, I get to play it on March 1st. So I'm really excited. This Friday, I'm going to start Expeditions, a Mud Runner game, and we're going to play it on stream, and we're going to have a ton of fun, which also kind of leads me into the end of the podcast here. But before we get to the end of the podcast, I have been playing a couple other games as I've been, moving through over the last couple of nights. Every night, like I said at the beginning, I do retro game nights. So I kind of focus on more old school retro games. I played through Batman and Batman Return of the Joker on the NES, which, man, was a real fun time. Oh boy, that was a fun couple streams. And then that led me to Game Boy games. I don't play a lot of Game Boy games. I haven't played a lot of Game Boy games. The basic ones that I have played, like Link's Awakening and Tetris, that's kind of about it. But I've been playing through the Batman games on Game Boy as well. I got to the Joker on the original Game Boy Batman game, but it's like really geared to be really, really, really hard, bullet spongy enemy and stuff. So I kind of put that off to the side, and it didn't get finished, but I got to the Joker. Then I moved on to Batman Revenge of the Joker on Game Boy. And oh my gosh, this game looks so cool. It is basically Batman, the animated series, in Game Boy form, and the fluidity of Batman's sprite, the fast and I'm trying to think of the word. It's not twitchiness, but the tight controls of Batman and how he moves and jumps and reacts, and also has wall jumps. Man, it just, oh my gosh, I can't wait to play more of it. So I've been playing that. And then I moved on to Donkey Kong Land on the Game Boy. So Donkey Kong Land would come out in the store every once in a while. Someone would trade it in. And whenever someone would trade it in, I would always have to test the games. So I played the first level of Donkey Kong Land tons of times, but I never realized how much of a fun experience, fun game, and how crazy similar it is to the Donkey Kong Country series. So I've been going through that. Unfortunately, like I said, I've been having a lot of stream issues over the last couple of weeks. I think I might have figured it out, but Donkey Kong Land, I finished on stream. However, the stream died multiple times while I finished it. So I didn't finish it on stream technically, but I played through 99% of that game on stream. I just didn't get K. Rool's boss fight on stream. The stream crashed multiple times, and I didn't realize that until afterwards. Then I moved on to Donkey Kong Land 2. This one, however, it's much bigger. It plays really, really well. It is a fast moving game. Man, I am so impressed by how well these games play. But it is a little too similar to Donkey Kong Country 2. So that's where I am right now. I'm kind of near the end. I'd say I probably have another hour, maybe hour and a half of Donkey Kong Land 2. And then I'll move on to Donkey Kong Land 3 on the Game Boy. It's kind of crazy. I love it. So now we're at the end of the podcast. The podcast, I try and have certain sections. First, what I'm playing on, in life and on stream, and then kind of talking about some other things, talking about some of the things that I'm looking forward to, and then ending with Game of the Month. So February's Game of the Month is Yakuza Like a Dragon. I've been having a real fun time with this game, but it is definitely not a game people want to see streamed. So I haven't had anyone show up during the time that I'm streaming it. And it would probably maybe be better for me to play this off stream so that I can just focus, because half of the gameplay is cutscenes. It's a lot of cutscenes, but it's really good. It's another Yakuza game. I'm trying to remember the guy's name, Sagura, but his last name's Ichiban. And the Japanese always use the last name first, and all this. It's weird. Anyways, Ichiban is the new character instead of Kiryu Kazuma from the other Yakuza titles. But man, it's so good. I've been having a blast with it. But we're at the end of the month, so I'll do a stream tomorrow of Yakuza Like a Dragon. I would love to finish it. My design and hope for Game of the Month was that a lot of people would kind of really enjoy watching me stream it, so I'd stream it more. But I have not been streaming it as much as I wanted to. And maybe I just need to have it off stream and play it by myself and finish it up, because I've been having a real fun time with it. But March's Game of the Month is Expeditions, a Mud Runner game. And we got Chocolatiel coming in at the end of the podcast. Man, hey, Chocolatiel, how you doing, man? How you doing, brother? I hope you're doing well. I'm recording my podcast right now. 180 I'm talking Yoshi about what I do for Game of the Month. So right now I've been playing through the Yakuza Like a Dragon game. And now, as soon as February is over and we get into March, I'm going to start playing through the sequel to SnowRunner, which is kind of a car driving exploration game. It's called Expeditions. It comes out March 5th, but I'll be able to play it on March 1st. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But man, how you doing? Yeah, I think Game of the Month is really cool. I've been doing it for the last few years. Every month I kind of, come up with a game to play. And Yakuza Like a Dragon has been February's. I've been doing it a few times. I try and do it every Monday night. But definitely not as much as I wanted to this month. I really like the Yakuza series. And if you want to check out more of my stuff, all the stuff that I do and posting the podcast, it's definitely on Apple and Spotify, but I also post it and host my podcast myself. I self-host on my website, gameordie.net. So if you go to gameordie.net, you'll be able to see all the articles that I write, all the game reviews that I write for every game that I beat on either stream or just in regular life, and also host the podcast. So it's been a blast. It's been really, really fun. But that's going to do it for the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you next time on the podcast. Have a wonderful rest of your day.